we want to try and help those people make more money. Like our goal is not to just send loads of mail for people and get them to pay us loads of money. Like our goal is to make things profitable for brands, and pretty often that we tell brands to not send mail, which seems counterintuitive, but again, our goal is to make brands money. So a lot of the time that means don't send the mail because the mail costs you money, and if it's not going to convert, you shouldn't be sending it. Incrementality is super important. Attribution is very hard online. You've got multiple channels running at the same time. Figuring out where your orders are being attributed from is just wildly difficult. So one of the things we like to make sure we're doing is making sure everything we're doing is incremental.
Hey guys, and welcome to the CEO After Dark show. Today I have with me Gabriel Loftus, the co-founder of Paperrun, a direct mail solution for e-commerce brands, and a former Meta product management lead. Gabriel, correcting the accent.
Whatever you want.
Gabriel has been, to me personally, an amazing partner. We've had a few joint clients. And I think what they're doing is quite special, if I'm honest. I think their approach to working with merchants, to doing business in general as a whole is extremely refreshing in what I would describe as a pretty dirty space as a whole. Gabriel, thank you for taking the time to speak to me today.
Thanks for having me on.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and like what you guys do? Like, what are you working on right now? That's a way to think about this.
Yeah, sure. So a bit of background on myself. Spent the last 7 years at Meta. Nearly all of that time was focused on building up products for businesses. Started off actually as a CSM, like account manager. So working directly with businesses to help them implement the workplace product that we built out. Ended up moving into product management, again, with a strong focus on B2B products. So worked across Workplace, which was our productivity solution, to some of the VR for work stuff we were doing, all the way through some of the ad system across catalog, Instagram shopping, dynamic ads, business messaging. So learn a bunch at Meta. I mean, amazing place to go learn. Couldn't recommend it more. Amazing people, amazing opportunities to go learn stuff and build things for businesses, which are just highly impactful. Left Meta just over a year and a half ago to go build up Paperrun. Simplest form of Paperrun, we send direct mail, like physical mail through the post.
You have to explain this. People don't know what it is.
Yeah.
You have to explain.
Yeah, not the Meta type of DMs, a different one. So yeah, physical mail. We send that specifically for Shopify brands. That's the simplest way to explain it. I'm sure over the course of this, we're going to go into more detail on some of the nuances in it.
I want to understand why direct mail, like how did this start? Because it's almost like an old school type of thing, right? But you guys are bringing freshness to it. You're making it more accessible, more easy, more scalable, more efficient in terms of costs. But like, how did you come up with this?
Yeah. So e-commerce and building for businesses was something I always wanted to go do. My dad had a watch business. My mom sells interiors online. A load of my closest friends have built e-com businesses. So like, this was always something that I wanted to go build for. It's always a service I wanted to go build specifically in the e-com space, especially after I left Meta and wanted to go start a company. Look, in my light experience with e-com brands, the ones that I spend time with, it seems there are only a handful of tools available in like the brand toolbox to help people grow. Meta is probably the most amazing place ever built to help people acquire customers, like help brands acquire customers. Meta has changed really the whole landscape of how these businesses grow online. But there are so many other parts of the growth equation. Like we'll talk about some of the ways in which like we thought about growth at Meta, but there are so many other parts of the growth equation than just acquiring people. And it seems like the strategies that currently exist there in the e-commerce space are pretty nascent. Direct mail is a space that has a ton of opportunity. It's a hugely underleveraged channel for brands. It can be incredibly profitable when implemented correctly. So we felt like this was an interesting space to go build on. It was fascinating to figure out like how we would do targeting, attribution, make this a channel that brands can scale with. So that's why we started it. The way in which we like to position the direct mail channel with brands is to focus from a retention perspective, specifically looking at it as a complementary channel to the other channels that they're working with. This is you have a business with multiple channels. You can't just try and use them all in the exact same way. They all need to complement each other. So the way we try and help brands position direct mail is very much complementary of their existing kind of growth strategies. And again, happy to help folks if they want to try out prospecting, but we don't like to really push that heavily, mainly because we find it challenging to get lower CACs than Meta. And if I was a brand owner, I would generally go to the place where I get the cheapest CAC.
So another way to think about this, I guess, is that you are helping brands monetize the existing audience that you've already acquired through a channel like Meta, right? Like that would be appropriate to say.
Yeah, I mean, so here's an interesting way to think about growth. This is one of the things that I think I learned at Meta and probably stuck with me the most. I had a mentor at Meta. His name's Ryan Wiggins. He now leads growth at Mercury Bank. Previously at Meta, he was like leading growth on WhatsApp. It's like amazing brain, huge crush on that guy's brain. I still speak to him a ton, still a mentor of mine. We worked together on some stuff on Workplace, like helping grow the Workplace product. Ryan had the desk like 5 down from mine, and he used to have a stack of white paper and crayons because he tried to explain stuff as simply as possible to people. Whenever anyone had a growth question, they would go over to Ryan, and he would literally take out his crayons and like draw something out really simply on a piece of paper and like hand it to the person to take home with. Like he really explains stuff incredibly simply, and that's an amazing art form. What he liked to explain to everyone as a starting point was this concept of like growth accounting. Growth accounting is basically the formula for like how things grow, right? It's really, really simple formula. You can like caption it on this podcast if we need to, or like save it at the top. Growth accounting essentially is number of new customers you've acquired minus the amount of customers who have churned plus the number of customers you've won back, so resurrected, who had previously churned, have come back. Those are basically your 3 levers to growth. Increase acquisition, like acquire new users, reduce churn, or win back people who have churned. Like those are the only 3 things that you can go do from a strategy perspective to grow a product, including an e-com brand. So where we like to focus is on the latter 2 parts of that equation. Especially as CAC has gone up a ton over time, it's getting harder to acquire customers. Therefore, you need to make sure that the second parts of the equation make sense if you're going to grow. We like to focus a ton on retaining users, so reducing churn, and winning back users that you have otherwise lost.
And what I really like, and by the way, Gabriel has not paid me to say this, I'm just like being transparent because I really like what they're doing, is that the team at Paperrun, when they are starting with a new company, they are going through a process of proving the incrementality also of the channel. They don't just try to push for maximum volume. They don't try to like charge the maximum amount of money that they could, frankly, but they try to start small and target those users that you've, I guess, truly lost. You can't contact otherwise, and perhaps you want to speak about this. But essentially, it's very clear that this is adding to the bottom line of the business. And again, going back to my previous point, that's why I like you guys so much, because you're always transparent and you are always fair to the merchants that we've brought to you.
Yeah, like one, this is part of the ethos of how we build and why we build. Like again, this was routed in friends, families who have built businesses in this space, and we want to try and help those people make more money. Like our goal is not to just send loads of mail for people and get them to pay us loads of money. Like our goal is to make things profitable for brands, and pretty often that we tell brands to not send mail, which seems counterintuitive, but again, our goal is to make brands money. So a lot of the time that means don't send the mail because the mail costs you money, and if it's not going to convert, you shouldn't be sending it. Incrementality is super important. Attribution is very hard online. You've got multiple channels running at the same time. Figuring out where your orders are being attributed from is just wildly difficult. So one of the things we like to make sure we're doing is making sure everything we're doing is incremental. 2 pretty clear approaches to that. One is an experimental design, like let's make sure that we're targeting people who we feel like otherwise would not purchase. Cool. Second is through incrementality testing. And again, that's like part of that same philosophy that we've tried to build the product from, learning from like some of those tactics from Meta, which is we're not sure about how we attribute something that we're doing. Let's go incrementality test it, and the science is going to show us.
Can you speak to how that works? I believe you're using holdout tests, but if you could explain for people that are listening, that would be good.
Yeah, holdout groups are um, pretty simple concepts to understand. I'll give you an example of a customer of ours. We just shared a case study on it. This is not a plug to go look at our case study section, but it's one that I can talk about because we have a case study. Uh, yeah. So a brand called Prescription is a juice cleanse company in the UK. They wanted to go understand if sending like a thank you note to new customers who have just purchased from them would drive increased retention, would like drive repeat purchase. In all honesty, we were very skeptical of it. We thought that this would be a case of like, you're going to send mail with low impact. And our recommendation to the founder of the company, Mitch, was like, please don't do this. Don't think it's going to have any incremental uplift. He wanted to give it a go. So we set up a holdout group. The way this works is every day Prescription have, let's call it, as an example, 10 new customers. 5 of them are going to get the mail. 5 of them will get nothing. So over time, we basically have these 2 groups. We have these groups where, like, after their first purchase, they got a thank you note from Mitch, and a group of customers where after their first purchase, they did not get a thank you note from Mitch. What it allows us to do when we're measuring things is say, well, is there any difference in terms of repeat purchase rate of these 2 groups? Like, the only difference between the groups is one got a thank you note, one didn't. So it allows us to basically show you, hey, is there any significant uplift in doing this action, which is sending the thank you note? Results from Mitch were wonderful. There's my plug to go look at the case study section. But generally, we like to go do that when there's questions around, is this thing going to be incremental? We love to do incrementality testing. It's just the best way to understand stuff.
And I just want to add here, because I think this is relevant in other channels as well. You can do this in all channels. Like if you were to take our channel as Yocto, which is usually email, say that you're using something like Klaviyo, you could add what's called a custom property to users' profiles. One could be your group that receives no marketing asset, and the other group could be your variant that does receive the marketing asset. And then over a period of 30, 60 days, you could see what impact, if any, it has. And this is really good to do, especially when you're trying out something new. In my experience, though, to be honest, what I often see is that brands are kind of impatient and they're like, is it working? Is it working? Like they don't have the time to really like wait 30 days, 60 days so that like we really see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, we have to set that expectation up front. Direct mail is not it's not email. You don't click send and it arrives in someone's inbox the next day. So we set that expectation up front. It's going to take time to start seeing conversions come through. Mail takes time to go through the post. Not everyone opens the mail every day. Surprisingly, I don't. People put these postcards to the side. So like sometimes people receive a mailer, put it inside of a drawer, put it up on the fridge, use it at a later point on the weekend when they're like ready to do their online shopping. So this is a slightly slower channel, and we just try and set the expectation up front.
What could be super interesting would be to survey people that receive and purchase through direct mail to kind of understand how they interact with direct mail. That would be super interesting for us, like for us as an agency to understand. I don't know if you've had done anything like that before, but like, for example, what you said, how many times a week do you actually check your mail? Like that sort of thing, I think would be super interesting.
Yeah, there's a ton of studies done on the direct mail industry in general in terms of like how long, what is the life cycle of a piece of mail once it enters the home? Like how many days does it normally spend there? How often do people check mail and so on? There are going to be variances in that based on demographic. So it's not a one size fits all answer to every single brand because some brands will be serving different demographics to others. But it's definitely it's an interesting area to go explore. For the most part, again, we try and just set the expectation to brands of like, this thing isn't going to turn around results tomorrow. This is not like sending out an email where you're going to be able to measure results in 24 hours.
The one thing I want us to clarify in this conversation for people that are listening in is how is this actually different than just going somewhere and like printing postcards and mail? Like, what's the UVP, if you will, versus the old school direct mail? And by UVP, I mean like unique value proposition.
Yeah, there are a ton, and I'm not going to do the full sales pitch for you guys because that's not the point of this. But the main point is that it's really expensive and cumbersome to set up the direct mail channel. Um, People can do it. Like direct mail has existed for a very, very, very long time. So if you really want to go do it, you can do it. It's just going to cost a lot. It's going to take a tremendous amount of effort, especially for direct to consumer brands, where most direct to consumer brands don't have a direct mail manager who's like just solely focused on this channel. I haven't met a direct mail brand that has excess capacity. Everyone's stretched and doing what they're currently doing. So it's hard today. We've specifically built Paperrun for direct to consumer brands. We don't serve other verticals. Everything we do is for direct to consumer e-com brands. I'll give you one example because I'm not going to run through the full sales pitch. But one example of that is like automated flows. Historically, in the direct mail space, you'd have to wait till you have a list of a certain size, like export it as a CSV file, like send it over to some direct mail house. They'd go print it for you. It takes a bunch of effort with pretty low results. And then if you want to go do it again, you'd have to go through that whole process one more time. What we built with Paperrun is just the ability to automate direct mail flows in the same way you would with email. So everything is trigger based. There's no more operational uplift for brands or people working inside of the brands to get this channel running and scaling. Everything is just fully automated as you do with emails.
I also want to talk a little bit about the creative side of things, because you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an expert at this, but as far as I know, traditional direct mail was more like copy heavy, if you will. Like there were like there was a sales pitch essentially when they were sending those mails to people, and they were trying to kind of persuade people to purchase. But what I've noticed in the more modern iteration of direct mail is that it's pretty light on the copy. There's a clean, nice design and a simple offer, and it seems to be working amazingly well. Um, is there any sort of insight or best practice that you could share in regards to creative?
Yeah, so one, we generally offer creative services to brands. We have a team of people who design direct mail creative. Um, Again, same kind of thing we talked about before, right? I've yet to meet a design team at a direct to consumer brand that has excess capacity to go design direct mail creative. So we offer that for them. Same kind of reason. One, take the time off. B, I think we're really good at doing it. So we can probably get you some really awesome designs very quickly, and then the brand can change them as they want. In terms of best practices, there's a couple. Like one, we like to think of like the sniff test. Like this just actually encompasses everything. Like when you've got mail coming through the post, there's probably a very short window for you to decide, like as you're going through the stack of mail, like what you're going to keep a look at versus what you're going to cache. Like that's just like the reality of the channel. And you've probably got like a few seconds really of like a glimpse to pass that sniff test of like, am I going to look at this or not? I think same is probably true on any short form content channel like a TikTok or Reels or ads even. Like you've really just got a couple of seconds to grab someone's attention. Otherwise, they're just scrolling through, and the same is true, I think, for direct mail. So a couple of ways we like to try and pass the sniff test. One, it's from a brand that you know. Like you're way more likely to take notice of a piece of mail from a brand that you know. So making sure that it's very obvious who the brand is. Like let's use brand assets, brand imagery, brand product imagery, colors, fonts, all that kind of stuff. Like it's going to grab your attention because you've purchased from this brand or you've interacted with the brand before. Second thing is let's make sure you know it's for you. Like no one wants the old school like leaflets which come through the door, which look like they've just been dropped in every single person's postbox. So every single piece of mail we send out is fully personalized. Like George, if I'm sending you out a mailer from your glasses company because you're not opening their emails anymore and you haven't purchased from them in a year, we're going to have your name in big writing at the top. It'd be like, George, we miss you. Something along those lines, right? That's going to grab your attention much more. And the third thing in the sniff test is like, once I've realized, hey, this is a brand that I know, this is addressed to me, like this is personalized for me, it's not just a generic thing, is we want to get to the point quickly. If there's an offer, let's get to the point of the offer quickly. If there's a new product that's being released, let's get to the concept of the new product that's being released pretty quickly. And visuals just help generally get points across much, much faster than like heavy text. So that's how we like to try and pass that like sniff test. That normally manifests itself in the type of creative that we make. But at the same time, like there are some brands who would like to do their own creative.
Yeah.
would like to test other things. So we're also happy to support if they want to test more text-heavy things.
Is there any variability in costs if people are testing multiple different designs? Like, for instance, and I'm saying this because just to expand on the personalization piece that you mentioned, what Paperrun can do is target specific segments that are built on Klaviyo, right? So any sort of segmentation that you do on Klaviyo, you can essentially replicate on Paperrun. So you can have, for instance, a group with zero-party data that says they're going to achieve X, Y, Z, and another group that wants to achieve something else and send different creative to those two groups. Would doing something like this add any additional cost, or is it all the same cost regardless of how many variations they have?
No extra cost. Like, again, just going back to like ethos of what we're building, we're trying to help brands make money. So if we're going to squeeze brands and to get us to spend more money to pay us to do stuff that is going to be profitable, then we're not really going to be able to help them out. So we want to reduce all of the barriers to helping brands make money. And that includes if they want to go test out a bunch of new flows with new designs, we're not going to make it expensive for them to go do that. So we don't add additional costs for that.
Interesting. I want to talk about growth because you spoke about growth earlier on yourself, and I want to understand how Paperrun grows. Like, how do you guys grow at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty simple, like we don't have like some revolutionary, like land on Mars kind of like strategy to go grow. We focus, and we have some shared customers, so hopefully you can attest to the same thing. We focus a ton on customer NPS. We want every customer to have an amazing experience because we talked about before that whole like growth accounting equation, which I think at this point we need like plus at the top of the screen, just because I keep referencing it. But there's no point of acquiring new customers if you're constantly losing them at an unsustainable rate, right? So we focus a ton on customer satisfaction, making sure everyone is absolutely delighted with Paperrun, making sure the brands are using this as a profitable channel and making money. So it's a pretty simple growth hack. Make customers happy. They're going to stick around for longer, which means that part of the growth accounting equation of like retained users kind of ticked. And in doing so, we then see really nice halo effects where a lot of the brands that we end up working with have been referred by customers of ours who have had a good experience. Yep. So that's how we think about growth. Build something people want, make people happy, and growth will follow.
So it's amazing experience, which leads to retention, which leads to word of mouth.
Yeah, that's it. Simple. Like, can't grow a product that doesn't work well. And working well includes everything from like the actual product performing in the way it wants to, the way people want it to, but also the service surrounding it. So we focus 100% on that part of the equation, and it makes growth a lot easier. It makes acquisition easier if you have a great product and a great service. Very, very hard to acquire people to a service which is bad.
You've been doing this for, you mentioned 1.5 years, correct? Like, or approximately.
We started Paperrun just about a year ago, yeah.
1 year ago or so. Okay. And what's been the worst possible horror story, mess up? And like, what's the worst thing that has happened? I always like to ask things like that because they're usually funny.
Yeah. Some of them are pretty fresh. Probably don't want to talk too many details. I'll give you maybe a couple, and maybe some also like maybe some transferable insight as well, because there'll be folks listening to this, and going to like direct mail on Paperrun specific is probably not useful for people. There is a really great story article around like early stage B2B products. It describes basically an early stage B2B service or product as hunters, figuratively. And basically it like paints this world of, hey, if you're an early stage B2B startup, you're a hunter. You basically have 3 types of things to hunt. You can hunt rabbits, deer, or elephants. And basically it tries to describe each of those as like the size of companies you can go after. Rabbits are plentiful. You need to catch a bunch of them to be able to feed you and the team, but there's a ton of them. The issue is if you chase multiple rabbits, you end up losing them both. Elephants are these big giant accounts which like look really attractive from the outside. You're like, oh my god, if we land one elephant, the team could eat for a year, right? So like, let's go chase elephants. Problem with elephants is you could get crushed under their weight. They can like thrash you around a ton. And then you have like deers, which like are somewhat plentiful, kind of like rabbits. There's quite a few of them. They're also like decent size, so kind of like elephants. If you land one or two, it's pretty good for you. So basically, the entire article describes the fact that like early stage B2B companies should be deer hunters. And I think they have like a picture of the deer hunter, like poster kind of thing on it. I love that article for what it's worth. I mention it a ton to people when I'm speaking to them. In the early days, we did not listen to the advice. We tried to tackle a couple of elephants, and we just weren't ready for it. I think early stage, like B2B companies, there's a reason why you shouldn't go after the elephants, the big giant accounts. And it ended up thrashing us around. We ended up spending a ton of time on things which never really came to fruition because we couldn't like land the elephant. A really good lesson to us, but I think anyone building in early parts of like B2B, which I still consider us incredibly early, but you've got to really choose who you're going to go after and who you're going to work with, because time is probably the most important thing you have. So spend time in the places where you think you can have impact.
Who is your ICP, and how did you decide that they are the ICP? ICP as in ideal customer profile or client profile.
Yeah. I like to think about ICP as people who we think the product will work for and will be happy with our service, right? Like that's basically, so we're building very specifically for ecom brands, and we're going after ecom brands that we think the product will work for, not brands that we think we can sell to. Those two things can be different. And people who we think will be happy with the service. We've been pretty surprised how well it works in some verticals. Verticals like beauty and pet brands, this thing is working incredibly well for. But we also seen like a number of verticals where this just like makes a ton of sense. So we try and focus in the places where we think that we are going to be able to give people the service that we want to be able to give them, the results that we want to be able to give them. We don't, apart from that one story on the elephants, we don't just chase people for the sake of like landing customers. We want to make sure that we are acquiring customers who we think we're going to be able to give a good service to, going to be happy with us, and are going to retain. So that's kind of what we focus on.
What's tougher, being on Meta, high performance company, high quality people, I assume high difficulty of projects, or running the company, being a co-founder at least of the company?
Fuck. Like a hard question to answer, because I have, I'm sure, some ex-Meta people watching this as well. Very, very, very different set of challenges. In fact, entirely different. There's very little things that I do in my day to day which I was doing at Meta in my day there. So entirely different set of challenges. It's definitely higher stakes when it's your own company, right? Because if you don't do it, no one else will. And at the end of the day, the whole growth of everything is kind of reliant on you and my co-founder Brandon and the team that we have. Like, it's all reliant on us, right? There's no safety net there. That being said, Meta has some really high stakes decisions to go make too. You have a user base of 1 billion people. So you make a bad decision there, you're going to impact a lot of people's lives, right? So two things are very, very high stakes in terms of like how you operate, the rigor that you need to put into decisions. But the actual day-to-day and the sets of things that you go do is just incredibly different.
The one thing that I'm not,
I can't give you an answer on like which one is easier or harder. I think it's they're both challenging in different ways. Neither of them feel like a holiday, which I'm going to go like sit on the beach and relax.
I like that, the diplomat's answer. The one thing that I'm not settled on though, and I do want to pressure you on that so that you do tell me what your opinion is like, where do you learn most? Is it when you have complete ownership, but you are outside in the dark essentially, right? Like there's nobody to tell you what has to happen, nobody to kind of advise you on what has to happen, or where you're in the environment where there's always more senior people that can kind of guide you if you are lost?
Yeah, I'm going to give you another like diplomatic-ish answer. There are basically two different types of learnings, and some people actually thrive better, I think, in each one. But one of the amazing things you get in terms of learning at a place like Meta is you get this just wealth of knowledge and experience of like high performance products and people and processes. Like the story I told you about Ryan, like Ryan was probably one of the most influential people to me in terms of like learning. And I had just a ton of mentors at Meta who I was able to learn from their experience. They've done it before. They are probably best in world at doing something. So you can learn from someone else's experience. When you have your own company, you are learning through pretty much your own mistakes and like the experiences that you have directly. So doesn't mean you don't learn. Like I learn a ton, and I'm probably learning a bunch of different things I never would have learned at Meta in having a company. But it's a different form of learning, right? And some people actually learn really, really well by doing and failing and learning from themselves. Some people learn really, really well from learning from the experiences of other. So you're going to get two different things, basically, depending on which one you're at.
What's next for you guys? Like anything that you have in the pipeline for Paperrun, like in terms of like projects, product, anything, marketing, maybe, I don't know.
Digital direct mail.
What's that?
No, I'm kidding. That's email. No, roadmap is simple. Really, like again, we don't have some crazy plan to go colonize Mars. Roadmap is listen to customers. I can't tell you how many Slack threads I'm in. I think I try and be in a Slack thread with every single customer we have. Like listen to customers intently, and keep building stuff that is going to make them happy and they're going to help them achieve their goals. Right. So in terms of what we go build, and you can call me out on it whenever you see it. If we ever build something you don't think is with the customer in mind, let me know. But everything we build is based on feedback we get from customers or things we think will make their lives easier or make them achieve their goals around growing better. Loads of stuff to go build, that's for sure. But that's basically the plan. Everything we're doing revolves around that.
Okay. I guess you can't go wrong with that, right?
I don't know.
It's a good plan.
Yeah, like I think our intent is we want to make people super happy. We want to help people hit their goals. The e-commerce Shopify space it's hard as a brand owner. Like you don't have a ton of time. There's definitely like insufficient information around certain parts of your business and certain processes which you're like not experts on and so on. So a lot of e-com brands rely on services like ours to go help them do things which they can't do themselves, and want to make sure that we're doing right by them. That's it. I think there's a lot of services out there that don't necessarily do fully right by e-com brands, who that's what they were built to do, and I don't think they necessarily do it. So our goal is to just continue to hold that concept in high regard of like everything we're doing is to help brands grow better, be more profitable, be happy. So that's what we want to go build.
I can attest to that. Like as a brand owner, everybody's trying to take your money, and like most people are not going to give you back your money also. Like that's the worst thing. But you guys are some of the good ones. So talk to Gabriel, guys. Talk to Gabriel. It's a good product and he's a good guy. Thank you for taking the time to record with me. It was really nice to have you.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me on.